Dr. Sylva Manoogian, and she'll be followed by Ara Manoogian.
Mayor Gordon, Burbank City Council members, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am Sylva Natalie Manoogian, Doctor of Philosophy in Library and Information Science, currently an international library consultant and archivist specializing in cultural and linguistic diversity worldwide. My ancestry is Armenian. I was born in France, immigrating to the United States through Ellis Island in 1946. Public, academic, special, and personal librarianship, libraries where I have worked for over 50 years in various capacities, are treasure houses of knowledge and true universities of literacy and lifelong learning. Librarians, like myself, are the facilitators of access to the wealth of intellectual resources available in the libraries in various formats, and thus promoting the power of the written and spoken word. I am here this evening first to express my sincere appreciation and admiration to all of you, Mr. Mayor, and to the City Council, for the committed leadership and community service you provide. However, please allow me to share with you a video that calls attention to a situation that has impacted and continues to impact the lives of our cities, states, nations, and world. It has become evident that the United States government deems itself obliged to deploy destructive military means and support terrorism in the Middle East and other parts of the world. To me, it feels more as if the U.S. government, represented by its elected officials at all levels of the bureaucratic pyramid, are being overpowered by coercive external forces. This is contrary to the ethos, values, and culture of our land of the free and home of the brave. Please run the video.
Some hard-nosed people took over the direction of American policy, and they never bothered to inform the rest of us. I went through the Pentagon 10 days after 9/11. I couldn't stay away from Mother Army. I went back there to see Don Rumsfeld. I'd worked for him as a White House fellow in the 1970s. All this is in the book. And I said, am I doing okay on CNN? He said, yeah, fine. He said, I'm thinking about it. He says, I read your book. And he said, this is a book that talks about the Kosovo campaign. And he said, I just want to tell you, he said, nobody's going to tell us where or when we can bomb. Nobody. He said, I'm thinking of calling this a floating coalition. What do you think about that? I said, well, sir, thanks for reading my book. And he said, thanks, that's all the time I've got. Really? And I went downstairs, I was leaving the Pentagon, and an officer from the Joint Staff called me into his office and said, I want you to know, he said, sir, we're going to attack Iraq. And I said, why? He said, we don't know. He said, I said, well, did they tie Saddam to 9/11? He said, no. Well, I walked out of there pretty upset. And then we attacked Afghanistan. I was pretty happy about that. We should have. And then I came back to the Pentagon about 6 weeks later. I saw the same officer. I said, why haven't we attacked Iraq? We still going to attack Iraq? He said, oh, sir. He says, it's worse than that. He said, he pulled up a piece of paper off his desk. He said, I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office. It says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. I said, 7 countries in 5 years. I said, is that a classified memo? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. He was about to show it to me. He said, because I want to talk about it. And I sat on this information for a long time, for about 6 or 8 months, I was so stunned by this I couldn't begin to talk about it. And I couldn't believe it would really be true, but that's actually what happened. These people took control of the policy in the United States. And I realized then, it came back to me, a 1991 meeting I had with Paul Wolfowitz. You know, in 2001 he was Deputy Secretary of Defense, but in 1991 he was the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. It's the number 3 position in the Pentagon. And I had gone to see him when I was a 1-star general. I was commanding the National Training Center. I had met him one time. He said, if you ever get to Washington, come look me up. They always say that. Well, I was there in Washington. It was a Friday afternoon. I'd visited Colin Powell. He'd given me 5 minutes of his precious time and sent me on my way, and I was bored in the Pentagon, and I thought, I'll just go, who can I see? I think I'll see Wolfowitz. So I called, and up there he was available. Scooter Libby came to the door. I met Scooter for the first time, and he brought me in, and I said to Paul, I said, and this is 1991, I said, Mr. Secretary, you must be pretty happy with the performance of the troops in Desert Storm. And he said, well, yeah, he said, but not really. He said, because the truth is we should have gotten rid of Saddam Hussein, and we didn't. And this was just after the Shia uprising in March of '91, which we had provoked, and then we kept our troops on the sidelines and didn't intervene. And he said, but one thing we did learn, he said, we learned that we can use our military in the region, in the Middle East, and the Soviets won't stop us. He said, and we've got about 5 or 10 years to clean up those old Soviet client regimes. Syria, Iran, Iraq, before the next great superpower comes on to challenge us.
Speaker Manoogian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to cut my comments short because I've prepared a video also, which is a reality check.
Is the United States...
And so that's going to be the next video. We're going to just let it run. Go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manoogian. You can come back at the end for second oral if you'd like.
Thank you.
Is the United States supporting al-Qaeda in Syria? The answer is yes.
Fact number 1. There is no question that al-Qaeda fighters are part of the opposition forces attempting to overthrow Syria's government. Fact number 2. The creation of al-Qaeda wasn't Islamic fundamentalism. It was the CIA. The Mujahideen was created by the CIA to cause problems for the Soviets. Now, you might say that's crazy talk, right? Here's Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
To be fair, we had helped to create the problem we're now fighting. How? Because when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, we had this brilliant idea that we were going to come to Pakistan and create a force of Mujahideen, equip them with Stinger missiles and everything else to go after the Soviets inside Afghanistan. And we were successful. The Soviets left Afghanistan, and then we said, great, goodbye, leaving these trained people who were fanatical in Afghanistan and Pakistan, leaving them well armed, creating a mess, frankly, that at the time we didn't really recognize. We were just so happy to see the Soviet Union fall, and we thought, okay, fine, we're okay now. Everything's going to be so much better. Now you look back, the people we're fighting today, we were supporting in the fight against the Soviets.
So it's not a conspiracy theory, it's history. And it's history that's being repeated in Libya and now in Syria. But there is a bigger problem here, one that every American should be questioning. We're fighting al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, but we're also bombing al-Qaeda targets in Pakistan and in Yemen. And as we do that, something occurs known as collateral damage. Hundreds of civilians in Yemen have been killed in just the first half of 2012 by U.S. airstrikes aimed at al-Qaeda fighters.
We also have a history of kind of moving in and out of Pakistan. I mean, let's remember here, the people we are fighting today, we funded 20 years ago. And we did it because we were locked in this struggle with the Soviet Union. They invaded Afghanistan, and we did not want to see them control Central Asia. And we went to work. And it was President Reagan, in partnership with the Congress, led by Democrats, who said, you know what, sounds like a pretty good idea. Let's deal with the ISI and the Pakistani military, and let's go recruit these Mujahideen, and let's get some to come from Saudi Arabia and other places, importing their Wahhabi brand of Islam so that we can go beat the Soviet Union. And guess what? They retreated, they lost billions of dollars, and it led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So there's a very strong argument, which is wasn't a bad investment to end the Soviet Union, but let's be careful what we sow because we will harvest. And we now are making up for a lot of lost time.
So what you need to know tonight is heavy. Our government is bombing sites around the world in an ongoing war with Al-Qaeda. In Iraq, where Al-Qaeda had no presence before the U.S. war, Al-Qaeda is now thriving. The same Al-Qaeda, yes, created by the U.S. government in order to harm the Soviets. And today, at least 13,000 civilians in Afghanistan are dead as a result of that war with Al-Qaeda. So with all respect to Ms. Fitzgerald from the Irish Times, this is not propaganda. Rather, it is the question that every American should be demanding answers on from Congress and from this president. Why are we giving Al-Qaeda fighters money and weapons to overthrow yet another government in the Middle East? Today, our government claims they're freeing the people of Syria. Tomorrow, if history tells us anything, we will be killing and wounding civilians in airstrikes and then referring to them as collateral damage in a war with an enemy who we brought to power.
Thank you, Dr. and Mr. Manoogian. Our next speaker is Harry Bronozian, and he will be followed by Esther Espinosa.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I will sort of continue what we saw right now. This is nothing new. Since the Second World War, the United States have overthrown 34 countries worldwide. I can give you, starting from Italy in 1947, going to Afghanistan, 1980s, Panama, 1981-89, Grenada, 1983, Pakistan, 1988, Yugoslavia, 2000, Sudan, 2011, Libya, 2011, and Ukraine, 2014. This is a continuous process, it seems. And these are only some of the better-known cases where the U.S. successfully used force or fraud to put its puppets in power or remove leaders it didn't like. There have also been dozens, if not hundreds, of unsuccessful attempts, such as current war on Syria. And there have been undoubtedly been many successful U.S.-supported regime changes we do not know about. After all, such operations are called covert for a reason. They are designed to remain secret forever. This situation is unacceptable. The USA, born in a revolution against monarchy and imperialism, is a symbol of democracy. Its good-hearted, generous, somewhat naive people deserve better. A more democratic USA could cease overthrowing other people's governments and invading other people's countries. A more democratic USA would vote to mind its own business and stop wasting blood and treasure on misguided imperial adventures. And a more democratic USA would vote to dethrone the international bankers and organized criminals who currently run the world. The USA should stop sponsoring phony democracy revolutions around the world. The world and the American people should sponsor a democracy revolution in the USA. How could an American democracy revolution begin? The precursor to a democracy revolution is rising public awareness, which is the basic thing for anything, of the real state of affairs. By helping the public slowly awaken to the truth, the alternative media is setting the stage. What I would like to expect from you folks, the City Council and people around you, is to just evaluate what is going on in Syria. There's genocide going on in Syria. We have about 10 million people who are displaced. Christians and Armenians and other minorities are killed or expelled. And we are doing nothing about that. The humanitarian part is something that we're not considering, but we are arming the foreign so-called rebels, who have nothing to do with Syria, absolutely. They are from Chechnya, from Turkey, from Afghanistan, or from Azerbaijan, and they come and they just bring their Islamic fundamentalism against the secular regime that exists in Syria. And if this is what we want, then that's what you get. And I hope that having Congressman Adam Schiff, his office almost next door, maybe you can have a committee. We tried to meet him many times to discuss this, but he declined one way or another for the past 6 or 8 months. So if you can sort of organize a meeting and discuss this and have put everything in its right place, then we are really a democratic nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is
I'm gonna
Esther
diverge
Espinosa. Just briefly, before we have council member and staff responses to public comment, I do want to thank everybody who came, many of you who waited a long time. We had 3 speakers tonight who addressed their concerns to council, and I listened very carefully, but as much as I tried, I didn't see any bearing to city business with what they were talking about. I'm new at this position. I haven't for years been in a position to comment, but I want to remind everybody strongly that our business here is city business, and the purpose for us being here is to address issues for which we have control and jurisdiction. And as serious as there are problems in the world, we don't control what goes on in different countries and different hemispheres. I don't even know if we have much bearing on what happens in the state or the federal government. We can certainly write and sometimes take recommendations. So I'm going to just put this out for members here and members watching television. I sincerely welcome all public comment, but in the future I'm going to have to be a little tighter on the subject content. It really needs to stay on city business. That being said, do any members of the council wish to respond to the members of the public who've spoken this evening? Aaron Manoogian, and he will be followed by Mike Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your comment following our presentation today, and I understand your concern about how this is tied into the city of Burbank. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do my full presentation to explain that. As I've stated on my other presentations prior to this, that the importance is that the city of Burbank and the citizens of Burbank are not informed as to what's going on in their name overseas, and as you accurately characterized, a very serious situation that's going on. I'm going to play for you a recording from 2 of our mayors, yourself included, our 2 past mayors, on the 22nd of April and on the 6th of May, so we can understand where the city of Burbank, or at least me as a citizen, feels where the city of Burbank stands on these issues. So I'm going to play these for you really quick.
I want to tell you, as a resident of Burbank, how much pride I take living in a city that takes human rights so seriously and shows such respect for history and for those who have suffered through the genocide and their families, to take time at council and through civic events throughout the city to recognize the genocide and to commemorate it. We think that we move forward as a civilization, and in places like Syria and elsewhere, we were reminded of how little we have changed as human beings. And that makes it all the more important for us to recognize the tragedies of the past, to speak plainly and unequivocally and truthfully on subjects as grave as genocide. And I'm very grateful that the city of Burbank speaks so loudly on this subject, that the state of California does.
And you all know how much our whole council is in support of human rights everywhere, happening now. I mean, these are stories that need to be told, and we need to be more cognizant of this kind of thing going on in the world and take affirmative steps to do whatever we can to stop it.
I want to also take a brief moment to thank the members once again of the Holocaust Remembrance Committee. This year they put this memorial on, and it's important that we do recognize and remember because, as was stated, genocide is not something that's just something in the past. It's something that is here even today that we have to be ever guarding against. So thank you again for your participation.
And what I'd like to remind you from my past presentations is we're not asking for the city of Burbank to step in and stop a war or stop some sort of conflict that's going on that is being done in our name. But what's important is to reach out to our people, to our citizens of Burbank, who are the ones that are being represented, and I would say it would be accurate to say misrepresented as far as our values, our core values, and what we believe in. What's going on in Syria today is a direct reflection of what happened in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and as you heard tonight Wesley Clark speak very accurately, this is a plan that goes back to 2001 or 2001, where we have plans to take out 7 countries, and we're moving right along, not as scheduled because they want to do in 5 years. But again, what we're asking for is there anything that the city of Burbank that we can do to reach out to our people to educate them, so then the people of Burbank can actually have their voices heard by their representatives, like Adam Schiff. I'm in the 28th district. He's my representative, though I've been trying for months to speak with him, and he's completely ignoring me. He's put a big wall up that we hope to take down soon. And B, to vote their conscience, because the primaries are coming up in June, and the elections for our representative are coming up in November. So again, I ask from staff, from the city of Burbank, what can we do to educate our people? This is a Burbank issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manoogian. Mike Nolan, that's the last card I have. If anyone else would like to speak, please turn it on. Thank you. With respect to Mr. Manoogian coming back, I appreciate you coming back. And again, it's no way to infringe upon or limit your ability to express yourself, but it is of concern that we focus on what we can do as far as educating the public. I don't know that the city has within its charge to go out and educate the public about essentially issues that are not within our jurisdiction. I don't know if we have the resources or expertise to do that. I would encourage you to continue speaking out on what you believe in the community, and you're welcome to come down again. If you can tie whatever your comments are to the city, we'll be more than happy to hear from you. Again, we did find out some information during the airport presentation.